Welcome. This is a video overview of the group task that will be due in week 7, the Performance Measure Critique PowerPoint presentation for UMUC BMGT 364 Management and Organization Theory class. The purpose of this brief video is to provide an overview of Part 1 and Part 2 of the group task. So the first thing to note is that, again, it is a group task. Group team members were assigned at the beginning of week 2, and by this time you should have done a basic introduction and you should begin to work through an outline of what it is that you want to accomplish and some timelines. You're a self-directed team, a self-managed team, and so I won't be actively involved as the instructor in what you all do in this PowerPoint presentation group task. However, I will be checking into the study groups, and as needed and or warranted, I will reach out to individuals or the group. As a group and as a self-managed team, you are, as I said, you must determine your own timetable, the task list, the guidelines, how you're going to communicate, all of those things. But as an individual, you're expected to actively participate. Now, that does not mean that every individual is going to do the exact same thing. However, it is important to realize this is a group project, and I fully expect every team member on the group to work together towards creating a cohesive, well-worded, well-presented PowerPoint presentation on performance measure critiques. As such, you'll see highlighted on the screen now, if a student fails to contribute to the project, that student will earn a 0 for the PowerPoint presentation. In other words, simply because you have been assigned to a team does not mean you'll get the team grade. In order to get the team grade, you must work with the team. So what are you required to do? Well, there are different types of performance measures, and so I realize we won't be covering performance measures until week 7. However, this is due at the end of week 7, so it's important, as I've been saying all along in this class, that you read ahead. It's an 8-week course, requires you to do things a bit in advance. So there are 4 performance measure critiques that we are going to be focused on here: human resource measures, financial measures, market position measures, product service measures. It's expected that as a team, you all are going to select 2 measures within the human resource, 2 within financial, 2 within market position, and 2 within product service measures. Once you've identified those 2 within each of these different measures, you'll have a total of 8. How you all choose to split it up regarding who will do what within your team is totally up to you. However, all 8 of whatever's been selected need to be covered in the PowerPoint presentation. And here's what you need to specifically cover for each of the measures. You should be able to say or explain, define what the measure is. Provide a clear, succinct definition, explanation of the measure. Then secondly, you need to evaluate the usefulness and importance of the measure. In other words, why is this type of measure important to a business? And thirdly, if you have defined it properly and you can explain why it's important to a business, then you can say, what might a business do as a result of the information that they get? I'm going to use as an example market share. Now, I'm not going to provide the definition for you here, but I would define what market share is, and then I would say, well, the usefulness of market share to a business is, and you would provide a brief, don't want to say definition again, but an evaluation of the usefulness, why businesses choose to use it, and then potential actions. So for example, if a business finds that their market share is low, what type of action would they take? Likewise, if they found that their market share was high, what type of action would they take? So you'll cover all 3 of these aspects: explaining, defining it, evaluating the usefulness and importance, and also determining what potential actions an organization would consider in light of the actual outcome of a measurement. And you'll do that for each of the total 8 measures. Now you'll notice here that the students should present a 12 to 15 page PowerPoint slide. You're probably thinking at this point, well, there are 8 measures and you could easily see how each measure could be on 1 page. Well, you also need to, in your presentation, have a title slide, That title slide should include the names of every member that's participated, the course name, the date, and my name as the instructor. You would also make sure that you have a reference page. As always, for every assignment, you're going to want to have a reference page. Ideally, you should have an introductory slide that explains what it is you're going to be covering, and you should have a summary slide that basically says this is what we covered as a part of this presentation. So those 4 slides I just talked about, your title, your reference, your introductory, and your summary, take up 4 slides. You have the other 8 slides, possibly more, depending on what you need to cover on each of the measures, but at a minimum you have a slide for each one. So those 8 plus the 4 I just talked about gives you the minimum 12 that you should have. Understanding you should have no more than 15. Well, what that means is there may be a particular measure that requires you to have additional input, but all of them should not require you to do that. Each student within the team is expected to submit their PowerPoint presentation in the assignment folder in WebTyco as an attachment. Everyone should be submitting the exact same presentation, but the reason why we ask you to do this is it clearly defines for the instructor whether or not someone has been active. Obviously, you're not going to have the access to the presentation if you haven't been active in working with the team. So it's important that each person submit the PowerPoint presentation. If you do not submit it, if you're expecting someone else to submit on behalf of the team and you do not submit, you will get a 0 for that assignment. So it's important to do that. So that's part 1. Part 2 of the group project, though, is more of an individual assignment. Not more of, it is an individual assignment for you. So the first part is totally a group project. You all will work on that together, and you will each get the whatever the final copy is, and you'll submit that at the end of week 7. Also at the end of week 7, though, each of you should do a group task peer evaluation. A little bit later, you'll find in the course content area there will be a matrix for you to use. It's actually found right here in your syllabus, but it doesn't have the points here, so I've created one that you can actually simply cut and paste, and it's a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest score, 5 being the highest. And you'll simply put your name in here, so you'd put your name, I'm using sample X, and then you would put the names of each of your teammates here. So I'm just making up names here: Susie, Tony, Sharon, and can't come up with a second one or a fourth one right now, but Susie, Tony, and Sharon are your peers. They've worked with you. So what you'll do is you'll simply rate each person. So if you choose to rate yourself as a 4 in terms of participated in discussions and meetings, and let me just clarify here, I realize this is an online environment, so participation in discussions would mean participating in the asynchronous discussions you have in your study group. If you're posting things and you're active, then certainly you should probably give yourself a 5. If Susie hasn't been very active, you may want to give her a 1, Tony a 3, and so forth. Now, why is this important? Well, this particular peer evaluation is worth 5% of your total grade. And what it allows me to see and what it allows you to do is to have an active part in 5% of your grade for this group project, where it clearly illustrates the cohesiveness of the team, whether or not you all were working together as an effective self-managed team, and frankly, whether or not you participated. Now, I realize that sometimes in teams and groups you may have personal differences. Please don't take those into account when you're creating your group peer evaluation, but rather be very objective. Don't be subjective here. Be very objective about whether or not that person did participate. You may not have thoroughly enjoyed working with that person. They may have rubbed you the wrong way, but the reality is if they were active and participated in discussions, if they helped keep the group focused, if they contributed useful ideas, etc., and you'll go down this entire list, please be fair, because this does contribute to 5% of a person's grade. I will be watching. If I see something that seems very out of line, I'll reach out to you to ask why you rated a person that particular way. But in general, I just want to make sure folks know this should be an objective assessment and not a subjective assessment based on personalities. I believe that's it. If anyone has any questions regarding this assignment, please reach out to your instructor. Thanks.